Emotional intelligence, EQ, is critical in the workplace as it enables professionals to navigate complex interpersonal dynamics and drive success far beyond what IQ or technical skills alone can achieve. Daniel Goleman's Working with Emotional Intelligence illustrates this through examples like the librarian who averted a crisis by empathetically engaging student activists, showcasing EQ's power in conflict resolution. Its practical applications, such as self-awareness, empathy, and effective communication, help leaders inspire teams, foster collaboration, and adapt to modern challenges like remote work and globalized teams. Backed by robust research, EQ's relevance shines in today's fast-paced, diverse workplaces where emotional agility is essential for resilience and innovation. Mastering these skills is urgent for anyone seeking to thrive professionally in 2025's evolving landscape. Introduction: a new way to measure success. Welcome to this audiobook summary of Working with Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman, a groundbreaking exploration of how our emotions shape our success at work and beyond. Imagine a world where your IQ or technical expertise isn't the only yardstick for professional excellence. Instead, picture a workplace where qualities like empathy, self-control, and adaptability are just as critical, if not more so. In this book, Goleman, a Harvard-trained psychologist and former New York Times science writer, argues that emotional intelligence, or EQ, is the hidden ingredient that distinguishes star performers from the merely competent. Over the next 80 minutes, we'll dive into Goleman's compelling case, exploring how emotional intelligence transforms individuals, teams, and organizations. From real-world stories to cutting-edge research, we'll uncover why EQ matters now more than ever in our fast-changing, interconnected world. So, settle in as we embark on a journey to understand the heart of professional success. Part 1. Beyond Expertise, the Case for Emotional Intelligence. Picture yourself in a high-stakes job interview. You've polished your resume, showcasing your stellar grades, Ivy League degree, and technical certifications. You're ready to dazzle with your expertise. But as the interviewer leans forward, their questions shift from your skills to how you handle conflict, adapt to change, or inspire a team. Suddenly, your academic credentials feel like only half the story. This is the world Daniel Goleman invites us into in Working with Emotional Intelligence, a world where the rules of work have changed. In Part 1, titled Beyond Expertise, Goleman makes a bold case. Emotional intelligence, or EQ, is the true yardstick for professional excellence, far outweighing IQ or technical know-how. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll dive into this paradigm shift, exploring why EQ matters, how it shapes star performers, and what it means for you in today's turbulent workplace. Through vivid stories and groundbreaking research, let's uncover the heart of success. The changing rules of work. Goleman begins with a simple but profound observation. The workplace of the late 1990s, when he wrote this book, was undergoing a seismic transformation, and those changes resonate even more in 2025. Globalization, technological disruption, and relentless downsizing were rewriting the rules. Jobs, once secure, became precarious, even in thriving companies. Goleman shares a poignant story from a Fortune 500 executive who survived a brutal layoffs round. "I still have my job," the executive confided, "but I'll never feel the same about this place." This creeping sense of insecurity, what Goleman calls the new dread, reflects a workplace where loyalty is no longer guaranteed and labor market flexibility means constant churning. In such a landscape, technical skills alone aren't enough to stay employable. Instead, Goleman argues, we need portable skills, qualities like resilience, empathy, and adaptability that make us valuable no matter where we work. These qualities, Goleman asserts, are rooted in emotional intelligence, a term he popularized in his earlier book and expands here with a focus on work. EQ isn't about being nice or overly emotional. It's about managing our emotions and relationships effectively to achieve shared goals. Goleman defines EQ through 5 core capacities: self-awareness, knowing our emotions; self-regulation, controlling impulses; motivation, pursuing goals with persistence; empathy, understanding others' feelings; and social skills, handling relationships artfully. These capacities underpin 25 specific competencies, like initiative, trustworthiness, and influence, which distinguish star performers. To make his case, Goldman draws on decades of research, including studies of tens of thousands of workers across industries, from diplomats to programmers, revealing that EQ accounts for up to 90% of the difference between average and outstanding performance, especially in leadership roles. The Librarian's Triumph, a story of EQ in action. Let's bring this to life with one of Goldman's most striking examples. A librarian stationed at a U.S. information agency post abroad during the 1970s, a time of global student protests against the Vietnam War. She received alarming news. A group of student activists threatened to burn down her library, a symbol of American presence. Most might have panicked, called for security, or shut the doors. But this librarian, identified by the U.S. State Department as a superstar, did something extraordinary. She knew some of the student leaders personally and trusted their goodwill. Instead of confrontation, she invited them to use the library for their meetings and brought in local Americans to listen to their grievances. The result? A dialogue replaced a potential riot, and the library remained untouched. This wasn't just clever tactics. It was emotional intelligence in action, reading the emotional currents of a tense situation, leveraging relationships, and defusing conflict through empathy and social skill. This librarian's story encapsulates Goldman's core argument. EQ is what enables us to navigate complex human interactions where expertise alone falls short. Her academic knowledge of library management or American history didn't save the day. Her ability to empathize, build trust, and influence others did. Goldman notes that the State Department's selection process, which prioritized academic credentials, often failed to predict such on-the-job brilliance. Research by David McClelland, Goldman's mentor at Harvard, confirmed this. McClelland's 1973 paper, Testing for Competence Rather Than Intelligence, found that traditional measures like IQ or grades poorly predicted job success. Instead, competencies like empathy and initiative marked the stars. The librarian's EQ competencies, empathy, social skills, and political awareness, made her a standout, proving that human abilities, not just technical ones, drive excellence. The Programmer's Tale, EQ versus Technical Focus. To illustrate EQ's impact in a different context, Goldman contrasts two computer programmers, a scenario that resonates in today's tech-driven world. Both are tasked with designing programs to meet clients' business needs. The first programmer, a star performer, listens intently to his client, who says, "I need all the data in a simple format that fits on one page." He delivers exactly that, creating user-friendly software that delights the client. The second programmer, however, is mediocre. He dives into technical jargon, boasting about machine language routines and compiler speeds, but never mentions the client's needs. His programs, while technically sound, miss the mark because he's tuned out the human element. The star programmer's EQ, his empathy and communication skills, allows him to translate technical expertise into solutions that matter to people, while the mediocre programmer's lack of EQ limits his impact. This example underscores a critical point. Expertise is a baseline, a threshold requirement to enter a field, but it's EQ that elevates performance. Goldman cites studies showing that in technical fields like engineering or programming, where entry requires high IQ, typically 110 to 120, intellectual ability offers little competitive advantage among peers. Everyone in these fields is smart, so what sets the stars apart? Emotional intelligence. The star programmer's ability to listen, empathize, and adapt to the client's perspective makes him invaluable. In 2025, as AI and automation handle more technical tasks, EQ becomes even more critical for roles requiring human connection, creativity, and collaboration. The Diplomat's Dilemma. Practical intelligence meets EQ. Another powerful example comes from a cultural affairs officer in North Africa, faced with a delicate predicament. He received orders from Washington to show a film featuring a controversial American politician, deeply unpopular in the host country. Showing the film risked sparking riots. Ignoring the order could anger headquarters. His solution was a masterclass in practical intelligence fused with EQ. He screened the film on a holy day, knowing no one would attend, thus satisfying Washington's directive without offending the local community. This clever maneuver required self-regulation to stay calm under pressure, empathy to understand local sentiments, and social skills to navigate conflicting demands. Goleman highlights that such practical intelligence, combining expertise with emotional finesse, is what makes professionals effective in real-world scenarios. This story also challenges the myth that EQ is about being soft or overly emotional. Goleman clarifies that EQ often demands tough, strategic decisions, like confronting a truth or taking a calculated risk. The officer's decision wasn't nice. It was shrewd, balancing emotional awareness with organizational goals. Goleman's research, including analyses from Hay/McBER, shows that in fields like diplomacy or management, EQ competencies like political awareness and influence are critical for success. These skills allow professionals to read unspoken cues, build alliances, and achieve outcomes that expertise alone can't deliver. The neuroscience of EQ, why it matters. Goleman grounds his argument in neuroscience, offering a compelling explanation for why EQ is so powerful. Our brain's emotional centers, like the amygdala, evolved to handle survival tasks, detecting threats, building alliances, and adapting to change. These ancient circuits harbor the skills for self-management and social adeptness, learning differently from the cognitive brain's prefrontal cortex, which handles logic and analysis. Emotional competencies, like the flight attendant's witty response to frustrated passengers or the librarian's peacemaking, rely on a neural superhighway connecting the prefrontal lobes to the emotional brain. Damage to this connection, Goleman notes, leaves people intellectually intact but emotionally inept, unable to navigate human interactions effectively. This neuroscience lens dispels skepticism about soft skills. EQ isn't a passing fad. It's rooted in our evolutionary heritage. Goleman's work with the Consortium for Research on Emotional Intelligence in Organizations reinforces this, revealing that traditional training often fails because it ignores how the emotional brain learns, through practice, feedback, and time, not just lectures. In 2025, as workplaces embrace hybrid models and cross-cultural teams, understanding this science is crucial. EQ enables us to bridge divides, manage stress, and foster collaboration in ways that algorithms can't replicate. The modern workplace, EQ's rising relevance. Goleman's insights feel prophetic in today's context. The modern workplace, shaped by AI, remote work, and global competition, amplifies EQ's importance. Consider a 2025 scenario, a project manager leading a virtual team across 3 continents. Technical skills get the project started, but EQ, empathizing with a stressed colleague in Tokyo, motivating a disengaged developer in London, or resolving a cultural misunderstanding with a client in Sao Paulo, keeps it on track. Goleman's research shows that competencies like team building and adapting to change, which barely mattered in the 1970s, became critical by the 1990s and are indispensable now. New competencies, like leveraging diversity and catalyzing change, have emerged as hallmarks of star performers. Goleman also warns of a troubling trend. While IQ scores have risen globally, EQ is declining among younger generations. A study by psychologist Thomas Achenbach found that children in the 1980s were more emotionally troubled, lonely, angry, and impulsive than their 1970s counterparts, a trend that persists. These children, now in their 20s and 30s, enter the workforce with EQ deficits, making it urgent for organizations to foster these skills. Employers echo this concern, with surveys showing that over half of new hires lack motivation to learn, and many struggle with teamwork or handling feedback. EQ training, Goleman argues, is no longer optional. It's a competitive necessity. Closing, your EQ journey. As we wrap up this exploration of Part 1, let's reflect on what Goleman's case means for you. Whether you're a leader, a team member, or just starting your career, emotional intelligence is your edge in a world where expertise is table stakes. The librarian, the programmer, the diplomat, they all show us that EQ turns potential into impact. It's not about being perfect in every competency. Goleman emphasizes that strength in a handful, say, empathy and influence, can propel you to excellence. In 2025, as workplaces demand agility and human connection, EQ is your toolkit for thriving amid uncertainty. So, take a moment to ask, where do you stand with your EQ? Are you aware of your emotional triggers? Can you read a room? or a Zoom call, like the librarian read her activists? Goleman's message is clear. EQ isn't fixed, it's learnable, and the journey starts with understanding its power. Dive into working with emotional intelligence to discover how to cultivate these skills and transform your career. The workplace has changed, and EQ is your key to mastering it. Let's embrace this new yardstick and shine. Part 2. Self-Mastery, the foundation of emotional intelligence. At the heart of emotional intelligence lies self-mastery, the ability to manage our internal world. Goleman dedicates Part 2 of the book to 3 key domains: self-awareness, self-regulation, and motivation. Let's start with self-awareness, the ability to recognize and understand our emotions, strengths, and limits. Goleman tells the story of a high IQ executive with a level 6 cognitive capacity, smart enough to lead a global firm. Yet, he was fired from his previous job and struggled in his new role because he couldn't confront underperforming employees. His emotional agitation clouded his reasoning, proving that unchecked emotions can make even the smartest people falter. The power of self-awareness, knowing yourself. Goleman begins with self-awareness, the ability to recognize and understand our emotions, strengths, and limits in real time. It's like an internal compass, guiding us through the chaos of work and life. Without it, even the smartest minds can falter. Goleman shares the story of a high IQ executive, dubbed a level 6 cognitive talent, capable of leading a global firm. This executive had a stellar resume, but he was fired from his previous job and struggled in his new role. Why? He couldn't confront underperforming employees. When faced with tough conversations, his emotional agitation, anger, anxiety, clouded his judgment, making him defensive and ineffective. Goleman explains that this executive lacked self-awareness. He didn't recognize how his emotions hijacked his reasoning, a blind spot that derailed his leadership. Self-awareness isn't just about noticing feelings. It's about understanding their impact. Goleman cites research showing that emotionally self-aware leaders make better decisions because they can separate their emotions from the facts. Consider a modern example: a project manager in 2025 leading a hybrid team across time zones. During a virtual meeting, she senses her irritation rising as a team member misses deadlines. Instead of lashing out, her self-awareness kicks in. She acknowledges her frustration, takes a breath, and reframes the conversation to focus on solutions. This clarity, Goleman argues, stems from knowing her emotional triggers and limits, a skill that prevents missteps and builds trust. Goleman emphasizes that self-awareness is the cornerstone of EQ, underpinning all other competencies. You can't manage what you don't understand. He draws on neuroscience to explain why. The brain's prefrontal cortex, which handles self-observation, works with the amygdala, the emotional center, to monitor feelings. People with strong self-awareness, like the project manager, have a robust neural dialogue between these regions, allowing them to stay grounded. Goleman's research, including studies from Hay/McBeer, shows that self-awareness correlates with job performance across roles, from sales to leadership, making it a non-negotiable skill in today's workplace. Self-regulation, mastering your impulses. Building on self-awareness, Goleman introduces self-regulation, the ability to control disruptive impulses and adapt to change. It's about staying cool under pressure and flexible in uncertainty, qualities that define resilience. One of Goleman's standout examples is a flight attendant on a delayed Super Bowl Sunday flight, facing a cabin full of restless passengers. As people milled about, ignoring seatbelt signs, she could have barked orders or pleaded for compliance. Instead, she used a playful, sing-song tone. "You're standing." Her lighthearted approach turned frustration into laughter, calming the cabin. This wasn't just charm, it was self-regulation, managing her own stress to influence others positively. Self-regulation shines in high-stakes moments. Goleman recounts the story of a computer company executive who survived a corporate purge after a merger. While colleagues vented their anger or withdrew in fear, she stayed composed, focusing on her team's goals. Her ability to regulate her emotions, channeling anxiety into action, earned her a promotion. Goleman notes that self-regulation is critical in today's workplace, where change is constant. A 2025 scenario illustrates this. A software engineer faces a last-minute pivot in a product launch. Instead of panicking, he regulates his stress, collaborates with his team, and adapts the codebase overnight. His calm focus, rooted in self-regulation, saves the project. Goleman's research highlights why self-regulation matters. Studies of managers show that those who control impulses, avoiding outbursts or rash decisions, build stronger teams and achieve better results. This skill also fosters trustworthiness, a competency employers value highly. Goleman explains that self-regulation relies on the brain's ability to dampen amygdala-driven impulses, a process strengthened through practice. In an era of instant communication, where a heated email or Slack message can derail a career, self-regulation is a professional lifeline. Motivation, the drive to excel. The third pillar, motivation, is about harnessing emotions to pursue goals with persistence and optimism. Goleman describes it as an inner fire, driving us to excel not for external rewards like money or status, but for the joy of achievement. He cites a study of insurance sales agents, where optimists outsold pessimists by 37% in their second year. Why? Optimists see setbacks, like a lost sale, as temporary and specific, not personal failures. They bounce back, learn from mistakes, and keep pushing. In contrast, pessimists internalize rejection, losing momentum. This resilience, Goleman argues, is a hallmark of star performers. A vivid example comes from Goleman's analysis of a sales representative at a computer firm. Unlike her colleagues, who chased commissions, she was driven by a passion for solving clients' problems. When a major deal fell through, she didn't dwell on the loss. Instead, she analyzed what went wrong, refined her pitch, and secured an even bigger client. Her intrinsic motivation, coupled with optimism, set her apart. Goleman contrasts her with a colleague who, after a similar setback, became demoralized and quit. Motivation, Goleman stresses, isn't just about effort, it's about mindset. In 2025, motivation is critical for navigating uncertainty. Picture a startup founder pitching to investors during an economic downturn. Rejections pile up, but her motivation, fueled by a vision to innovate, keeps her refining her strategy. She lands a deal by focusing on long-term impact, not short-term setbacks. Goleman's research, including studies from David McClelland, shows that motivated employees drive organizational success, especially in roles requiring initiative and learning. This competency aligns with the brain's reward system, where dopamine fuels persistence, making motivation a learnable skill through goal setting and reflection. The hierarchy of self-mastery. Goleman emphasizes that self-awareness, self-regulation, and motivation form a hierarchy. You can't regulate emotions without knowing them, and you can't stay motivated without controlling impulses. Together, they transform raw potential into on-the-job excellence. He shares the story of a cultural affairs officer in North Africa, tasked with screening a controversial film that could spark riots. By staying self-aware of his stress, regulating his impulse to defy orders, and staying motivated to find a creative solution, he screened the film on a holy day when no one would attend. This seamless integration of self-mastery competencies resolved a high-stakes dilemma with finesse. This hierarchy is vital in modern workplaces. Consider a 2025 manager leading a diverse team through a company restructuring. Her self-awareness helps her recognize her anxiety about layoffs. Self-regulation keeps her from projecting that stress onto her team, and motivation drives her to inspire confidence, rallying her team to innovate. Goleman's studies show that these competencies account for 80 to 90% of the difference between average and star performers in leadership roles, making self-mastery a career game-changer. The modern relevance, EQ in 2025. Goleman's insights, written in 1998, are strikingly relevant today. In 2025, workplaces are shaped by AI, remote collaboration, and cultural diversity, amplifying the need for self-mastery. Self-awareness helps us navigate virtual miscommunications, like misreading a colleague's tone in a Slack message. Self-regulation prevents burnout in high-pressure, always-on work cultures. Motivation fuels lifelong learning, critical as automation demands new skills. Goleman warns of a growing EQ deficit, with studies showing younger workers struggling with impulse control and resilience, making self-mastery training urgent. A modern example illustrates this. A marketing director at a tech firm faces backlash over a campaign misstep. Her self-awareness reveals her defensive instincts. Self-regulation helps her listen to critics calmly, and motivation drives her to revise the campaign, turning criticism into a win. Goleman's neuroscience-backed approach, showing how practice strengthens neural pathways, offers hope. Self-mastery is learnable, not fixed. Organizations investing in EQ training, like mindfulness programs, see measurable improvements in performance and morale. Part 3. People skills, the art of relationships. Imagine you're leading a team meeting, and the room is tense. Deadlines loom, egos clash, and cultural misunderstandings simmer beneath the surface. Do you push through with data and directives? Or do you pause to read the room, listen deeply, and build trust? In Part 3 of Working with Emotional Intelligence, Daniel Goleman argues that people skills, empathy, and social skills are the secret sauce of workplace success, transforming relationships and driving results. We'll explore how these skills enable us to navigate the human side of work, from inspiring teams to resolving conflicts. Through compelling stories, rigorous research, and modern applications, we'll see why people skills are more critical than ever in 2025's interconnected, diverse workplaces. So, let's dive into the art of relationships and discover how to become a master of connection. Empathy, the social radar. Goleman kicks off with empathy, the ability to understand and share others' feelings, which he calls a social radar for navigating relationships. Empathy isn't just about caring. It's about accurately reading emotional cues to respond effectively. Goleman shares a striking example from the medical field. Empathic physicians who listen to patients without interrupting, allowing them to speak for at least 3 minutes, achieve better diagnoses, and face fewer malpractice suits. In contrast, doctors who cut patients off after just 18 seconds miss critical information, leading to errors and distrust. These empathic doctors don't just hear words. They tune into tone, body language, and unspoken fears, building trust that enhances outcomes. Empathy shines in diverse workplaces. Goleman describes a training program for flight attendants at a major airline hub, designed to improve their empathy for passengers from unfamiliar cultures. By learning to recognize cultural nuances, like how some passengers avoid eye contact out of respect, not rudeness, the attendants slashed complaint rates dramatically. This wasn't about being nice. It was about understanding others' perspectives to create smoother interactions. Goleman's research, including studies from the Consortium for Research on Emotional Intelligence, shows that empathy is a top predictor of job performance, especially in roles requiring customer interaction or teamwork. Consider a 2025 scenario. A customer service manager at a global tech firm handles a complaint from a client in a different time zone. Instead of offering a scripted apology, she listens carefully, picking up on the client's frustration over a cultural misstep in the product's messaging. Her empathy allows her to acknowledge the issue sincerely, propose a tailored solution, and rebuild trust. Goleman emphasizes that empathy is learnable, rooted in the brain's mirror neurons, which help us feel others' emotions. In today's globalized, remote work era, empathy bridges cultural and virtual divides, making it indispensable. Social skills, the art of influence and collaboration. While empathy helps us understand others, social skills turn that understanding into action. Goleman defines social skills as a cluster of competencies, communication, influence, leadership, and collaboration that enable us to manage relationships effectively. He shares the story of a sales representative who failed to win a client because he drowned them in technical jargon, ignoring their need for clear, relatable explanations. In contrast, a top-performing consultant at Deloitte & Touche excelled by building rapport, listening actively, and translating complex ideas into client-friendly terms. Her social skills, clear communication and influence, closed deals where technical expertise alone fell short. Leadership, Goleman argues, hinges on social skills. He contrasts two Delta Airlines CEOs, Ronald W. Allen, whose abrasive style alienated employees, leading to plummeting morale, and Gerald Grinstein, whose warmth and openness inspired loyalty. Grinstein's ability to connect emotionally, through town halls and personal gestures, created a culture of trust, boosting performance. Goleman's research shows that transformational leaders, who inspire through emotional resonance, rely on social skills like vision sharing and conflict management, which account for 80% of leadership competencies. A modern example illustrates this. A 2025 startup founder pitches her company to a skeptical investor panel. Instead of overloading them with data, she shares a compelling story about her team's mission, using humor and warmth to build rapport. Her social skills, persuasion, and emotional attunement secure the funding. Goleman notes that social skills are amplified by the brain's social circuitry, which thrives on trust and mutual understanding, making them critical for influencing outcomes in any collaborative setting. Teamwork and group IQ, the collective power. Goleman dedicates significant attention to teamwork, a cornerstone of social skills in modern organizations. He recounts the story of a data general engineering team in the 1980s, tasked with developing a groundbreaking computer. Their success wasn't just technical brilliance, it was a group IQ, where trust, shared vision, and emotional attunement created a state of flow. Team members challenged each other's ideas openly, resolved conflicts constructively, and celebrated collective wins, producing a machine that outpaced competitors. Goleman contrasts this with a dysfunctional cross-functional team that descended into chaos due to poor communication and mistrust, missing deadlines, and alienating members. This concept of group IQ resonates in 2025, where virtual and hybrid teams dominate. Picture a global marketing team launching a campaign across regions. The team leader fosters group IQ by encouraging open feedback, celebrating small wins, and addressing tensions early, using video calls to read nonverbal cues. Her social skills, like team leadership and conflict resolution, create a cohesive unit that delivers a hit campaign. Goleman's studies, including analyses of high-performing teams, show that competencies like collaboration and networking amplify collective performance, often outweighing individual talent. Goleman also highlights the cost of low EQ in teams. He describes a software development team where a brilliant but abrasive coder demoralized colleagues, stalling progress. A socially skilled manager intervened, coaching the coder to communicate respectfully, which restored harmony and productivity. This underscores that social skills aren't just for leaders. Every team member's EQ impacts the whole. In today's matrixed organizations, where cross-functional collaboration is the norm, these skills are non-negotiable. Leveraging diversity, EQ in a global world. Goleman emphasizes that social skills are critical for leveraging diversity, a growing imperative in global workplaces. He shares the example of a politically aware diplomat who navigated a tense negotiation by reading the unspoken needs of all parties, cultural, political, and personal. By building alliances and framing solutions inclusively, he secured an agreement where others saw only deadlock. This ability to bridge divides, Goleman argues, is a hallmark of emotionally intelligent professionals. In 2025, diversity is a workplace reality, from cultural backgrounds to remote work styles. Consider a product manager leading a team with members from 5 countries. When a design decision sparks tension, some team members feel their cultural perspectives are ignored. She uses empathy to validate their concerns and social skills to facilitate a collaborative redesign. The result is a product that resonates globally, proving diversity's value when managed with EQ. Goleman's research shows that emotionally intelligent leaders foster inclusion, reducing conflict and boosting innovation in diverse teams. Goleman also addresses the challenges of diversity without EQ. He cites a multinational firm where a manager's insensitivity to cultural norms, like demanding direct feedback in a culture valuing indirectness, alienated employees, tanking morale. Training in empathy and social skills, Goleman notes, can bridge such gaps, turning diversity into a competitive advantage. This is critical as organizations prioritize inclusion to attract talent and serve global markets. The modern relevance, people skills in 2025. Goleman's insights, penned in 1998, feel tailor-made for 2025. Remote work, AI-driven processes, and global teams amplify the need for people skills. Empathy helps us decode virtual interactions, like sensing a colleague's stress through a muted Zoom call. Social skills enable us to influence without authority, critical in flat, matrixed organizations. Goldman's research, backed by decades of data, shows that EQ competencies like empathy and collaboration drive 80 to 90% of leadership success, far outweighing cognitive skills. A modern scenario brings this home. A diversity officer at a tech firm faces pushback on a new inclusion policy. Using empathy, she listens to critics' fears of change. With social skills, she crafts a compelling case, rallying support through workshops and storytelling. Her EQ transforms resistance into buy-in, strengthening the company's culture. Goldman warns that EQ deficits, seen in rising workplace conflicts and disengagement, make people skills training urgent. Organizations investing in EQ, like role-playing programs, see higher engagement and innovation. Part 4. A new model of learning. Picture yourself in a corporate training room, flipping through a dense PowerPoint on leadership skills. The facilitator drones on, and by day's end, you're stuffed with facts but no closer to being a better leader. Sound familiar? In Part 4 of Working with Emotional Intelligence, Daniel Goleman tackles a critical question. Can emotional intelligence, EQ, be learned, and if so, how? His answer is a resounding yes, but it demands a radically different approach from traditional training. We'll explore Goleman's new model of learning, designed to build EQ competencies like empathy and self-regulation through practice, feedback, and time. Through vivid stories, neuroscience insights, and modern applications, we'll see why this model is a game-changer for 2025's workplace. So, let's dive into the art of learning EQ and discover how to transform ourselves and our organizations. The billion-dollar mistake: why traditional training fails. Goleman starts with a sobering reality. Most corporate training programs are a billion-dollar mistake. He cites a study of a week-long leadership seminar for executives that not only failed to improve their skills, but slightly worsened their performance. Why? Traditional training mimics academic models, focusing on knowledge transfer, facts, theories, lectures. But EQ, rooted in the brain's emotional centers like the amygdala, learns differently from the cognitive brain's prefrontal cortex, which handles logic. Emotional competencies, like staying calm under pressure or empathizing with a colleague, require behavior change, not just information. Goleman explains that the emotional brain learns through repetition, feedback, and real-world practice, much like mastering a sport or instrument. This mismatch has real consequences. Goleman recounts a company that spent millions on a management training program, only to see no improvement in teamwork or morale. The sessions were heavy on case studies but light on practical application, leaving participants unchanged. Goleman's research, including work with the Consortium for Research on Emotional Intelligence, shows that cognitive training fades quickly, while EQ-focused programs, designed for the emotional brain, yield lasting results. In 2025, as organizations face rapid change and talent shortages, wasting resources on ineffective training is a luxury they can't afford. Success stories: learning EQ the right way. So what does effective EQ training look like? Goleman shares inspiring examples of programs that get it right. One standout is the American Express Emotional Competence Training Program, which combined mindfulness exercises with coaching to enhance self-awareness and empathy. Participants practice techniques like deep breathing to manage stress and role-played challenging conversations, receiving real-time feedback. Goleman notes that brain scans of participants showed increased activity in neural pathways linked to emotional regulation, proving that EQ training rewires the brain. The result? Improved performance, better customer interactions, and higher job satisfaction. Another success story is the JOBS program, designed for unemployed workers in the U.S. facing the emotional toll of job loss. Participants learned EQ skills like optimism and initiative through role-playing interviews, group discussions, and coaching. One participant, a laid-off factory worker, transformed his defeatist mindset into confidence, landing a new role after months of rejection. Goleman highlights that the program's focus on practice, simulating real-world scenarios, helped participants internalize EQ competencies. Studies showed that JOBS participants found jobs faster and reported better mental health than those in traditional career workshops. A modern example brings this to 2025. A tech company launches an EQ training program for its remote workforce. Employees engage in virtual simulations, practicing how to handle conflicts over Zoom or motivate disengaged teammates. Coaches provide feedback, and participants set personal EQ goals, like improving active listening. 6 months later, team collaboration scores rise, and turnover drops. Goleman's neuroscience insights explain why. Repeated practice strengthens neural connections in the emotional brain, making EQ skills second nature, much like muscle memory. The blueprint: how to learn EQ. Goleman outlines a blueprint for effective EQ training, drawn from psychology and neuroscience. First, assess readiness for change. People must want to grow. Second, set clear, specific goals, like "I'll pause before responding in heated meetings." Third, provide role models, mentors or videos of emotionally intelligent behavior. Fourth, offer frequent practice opportunities, like role-playing or real-world challenges. Fifth, give constructive feedback, ideally from coaches or peers. Sixth, create supportive environments, where colleagues reinforce new behaviors. Finally, ensure long-term commitment, as EQ learning takes months, not days. Goleman shares an example from the Weatherhead School of Management, where MBA students underwent an EQ-focused program. They identified strengths and weaknesses, e.g., per conflict management, practiced new behaviors in group projects, and received peer feedback. Years later, graduates reported sustained improvements in leadership and teamwork, unlike peers from traditional MBA programs. Goleman's research shows that such programs work because they align with how the emotional brain learns, through experience, not lectures. In 2025, this blueprint is critical for organizations. Picture a retail chain training store managers to handle post-pandemic customer frustrations. Managers practice empathic listening in role plays, receive coaching, and join peer groups to share progress. Over time, customer satisfaction scores climb, and employee retention improves. Goleman emphasizes that EQ training must be tailored to real-world demands, like managing virtual teams or navigating cultural diversity, to maximize impact. Overcoming barriers: the challenges of EQ learning. Learning EQ isn't easy, and Goleman acknowledges the barriers. Old habits, rooted in neural pathways, resist change. For example, a manager accustomed to interrupting colleagues struggles to adopt active listening, even after training. Goleman also notes that organizational cultures can sabotage EQ growth. He describes a biotech startup where relentless work hours and top-down communication stifled empathy, undoing training efforts. Employees reverted to old patterns, feeling unsupported. Yet, Goleman offers hope through examples of overcoming these barriers. At a global consulting firm, a leadership program paired EQ training with cultural change. Managers practiced self-regulation in meetings, while the firm rewarded collaborative behaviors. Over time, the culture shifted and EQ skills stuck. Goleman's studies show that supportive environments, where peers model EQ and leaders reinforce it, double training success rates. In 2025, organizations like this are rare but growing, as firms recognize EQ's role in engagement and innovation. A modern scenario illustrates this. A healthcare provider trains nurses in empathy to improve patient care. Initially, high workloads make practice difficult, but the hospital introduces peer support groups and reduces administrative tasks. Nurses begin using empathic techniques, like validating patients' fears, leading to better patient outcomes. Goleman's insight, that EQ learning requires systemic support, underscores the need for organizations to align training with culture. The modern relevance: EQ learning in 2025. Goleman's model, crafted in 1998, is strikingly relevant in 2025. The workplace, shaped by AI, remote work, and global competition, demands EQ to navigate complexity. Virtual teams require empathy to decode muted Zoom calls, rapid change calls for self-regulation to manage stress. Goleman's research, backed by decades of data, shows that EQ training boosts performance by 20 to 30% in roles from sales to leadership. Yet, he warns of a growing EQ deficit, with younger workers showing weaker empathy and resilience, making training urgent. A 2025 example brings this home. A financial services firm trains its hybrid workforce in EQ to improve client relationships. Employees use VR simulations to practice handling tough client conversations, with AI-driven feedback analyzing their tone and word choice. The program, spanning 6 months, leads to a 15% increase in client retention. Goleman's neuroscience-backed approach, emphasizing practice and feedback, explains this success as it rewires the brain for lasting change. Organizations ignoring EQ training risk falling behind in a human-centric economy. Part 5. The emotionally intelligent organization. Imagine walking into a workplace where trust flows freely, feedback is welcomed, and change feels like an opportunity, not a threat. This isn't a fantasy. It's the vision Daniel Goleman paints in Part 5 of Working with Emotional Intelligence, where he explores what makes an emotionally intelligent organization. Here, EQ isn't just an individual skill. It's a collective strength woven into the culture, boosting performance and human connection. We'll dive into how organizations can harness empathy, collaboration, and resilience to thrive in turbulent times. Through vivid stories, research insights, and modern applications, we'll see why this model is critical for 2025's workplace. Whether you're a leader, employee, or aspiring changemaker, this journey will show you how to build a workplace that's not just productive, but deeply human. So, let's explore the emotionally intelligent organization and its transformative power. The hallmarks of an emotionally intelligent organization. Goleman begins by defining an emotionally intelligent organization as one where EQ competencies, self-awareness, empathy, social skills, permeate every level, from leadership to frontline teams. These organizations foster trust, open communication, and adaptability, creating climates where employees feel valued and engaged. Goleman shares the example of Egon Zehnder International, a global executive search firm that thrives on emotional intelligence. At Egon Zehnder, employees are hired for EQ as much as expertise, and the firm encourages honest feedback, collaborative decision-making, and mutual respect. This culture drives high retention and client satisfaction, proving that EQ isn't just a soft skill, it's a competitive edge. Contrast this with a dysfunctional organization Goleman describes, a biotech startup with cutting-edge technology but a toxic culture. Relentless work hours, top-down orders, and poor communication left employees burned out and disengaged. Despite its innovation, the startup struggled to retain talent and meet goals. Goleman's research, including studies from Hay/McBR, shows that emotionally intelligent organizations outperform others by 20 to 30% in productivity and engagement. In 2025, as hybrid work and global competition intensify, fostering EQ at scale is no longer optional. It's a survival strategy. The power of collective EQ, turning chaos into success. Goleman illustrates collective EQ through a compelling case: the 1995 Lincoln Continental launch at Ford. The project was a mess, plagued by delays, turf wars, and emotional turmoil among the cross-functional team. Engineers blamed marketers, who clashed with designers, and unspoken fears about job security simmered. But Ford's leadership intervened with an EQ-driven approach. They facilitated open dialogues, encouraging team members to voice frustrations and fears without judgment. Workshops focused on empathy and collaboration helped the team rebuild trust. By addressing emotional undercurrents, Ford turned chaos into a successful launch, delivering the car on time to rave reviews. This story highlights a key principle: emotionally intelligent organizations manage change empathetically. Goleman explains that collective EQ, shared competencies like conflict resolution and team leadership, creates a group IQ that amplifies performance. The Ford team's turnaround wasn't about technical fixes, it was about human connection. Goleman's studies show that organizations with high collective EQ adapt faster to market shifts and retain top talent, critical in today's volatile economy. A modern example brings this to 2025. A global retail chain faces plummeting morale after a post-pandemic restructuring. The CEO launches an EQ initiative, training managers in empathy and hosting town halls to hear employee concerns. Cross-departmental teams collaborate on new customer strategies, fostering a sense of purpose. Within a year, employee engagement rises 25% and sales rebound. Goleman's neuroscience insights explain why. Emotional alignment strengthens neural pathways for trust and cooperation, creating a resilient organizational brain. Leadership's role: setting the emotional tone. Leadership is the linchpin of an emotionally intelligent organization, Goleman argues. Leaders set the emotional tone, shaping the culture through their actions. He contrasts two leaders at a manufacturing firm. One, a directive manager, dismissed employee input and prioritized quotas, leading to high turnover. The other, an EQ-savvy leader, listened actively, acknowledged team stress, and shared a vision that inspired effort. Her team outperformed the directive managers by 40%, despite similar resources. Goleman's research shows that emotionally intelligent leaders, who model empathy and social skills, create ripple effects, boosting morale and innovation. Another example comes from a hospital system Goleman studied, where a CEO's EQ transformed the culture. Facing budget cuts, she held forums to hear staff concerns, from nurses to janitors, and transparently explained decisions. Her empathy and communication reduced resistance, and her focus on collaboration led to cost-saving innovations like streamlined patient workflows. Goleman notes that such leaders use transformational styles, inspiring through emotional resonance, not just authority. In 2025, this is critical. Picture a tech startup where the founder models EQ by hosting virtual open mic sessions where employees share ideas and challenges. Her transparency and warmth foster a culture of trust, attracting top talent in a competitive market. Goleman's data, including analyses of 3,871 executives, shows that EQ accounts for 80% of leadership effectiveness, making it the cornerstone of organizational success. Fostering a culture of feedback and inclusion. Emotionally intelligent organizations thrive on feedback and inclusion, Goleman argues. He describes a financial services firm where regular, constructive feedback was the norm. Employees at all levels, analysts to executives, participated in 360-degree reviews, sharing strengths and growth areas. This openness, grounded in trust, drove continuous improvement and innovation. Goleman contrasts this with a retail chain where feedback was rare and criticism was punitive, leading to defensiveness and stagnation. Inclusion is equally vital. Goleman shares the story of a multinational corporation that embraced diversity through EQ. When cultural misunderstandings arose in a global project, leadership trained teams in empathy and cross-cultural communication. The result? A cohesive team that leveraged diverse perspectives to launch a blockbuster product. Goleman's studies show that inclusive cultures, fueled by EQ, increase innovation by 15 to 20% and reduce conflict. A 2025 scenario illustrates this. A consulting firm trains its hybrid workforce in EQ to foster inclusion. Virtual workshops teach active listening and cultural sensitivity, while feedback loops encourage idea sharing. The firm's diverse teams collaborate seamlessly, winning high-value clients. Goleman emphasizes that inclusion requires systemic EQ, policies, training, and leadership commitment to unlock diversity's full potential. The modern relevance, EQ in 2025's workplace. Goleman's vision, written in 1998, is prophetic for 2025. Remote work, AI automation, and global teams demand emotionally intelligent organizations to bridge virtual divides and maintain human connection. Empathy helps leaders manage burnout in always-on cultures. Social skills foster collaboration in matrix structures. Goleman's research, backed by decades of data, shows that organizations with high EQ climates see 25% higher engagement and 20% better financial performance. A modern example underscores this. A healthcare provider, reeling from staff shortages, builds an EQ-driven culture. Leaders train in empathy, hold listening sessions, and reward teamwork. The result? Nurse retention improves, and patient satisfaction soars. Goleman warns that EQ deficits, seen in rising workplace conflicts, make systemic EQ urgent. Organizations ignoring this risk disengagement and obsolescence in a human-centric economy. The challenges and path forward. Building an emotionally intelligent organization isn't easy. Goleman acknowledges barriers like entrenched hierarchies or profit-driven cultures that deprioritize EQ. He describes a tech firm where a high-pressure environment undermined EQ training, as employees reverted to cutthroat behaviors. Yet, success is possible with commitment. Goldman points to a logistics company that aligned EQ with strategy, tying bonuses to collaboration and feedback. Over time, the culture shifted and performance soared. In 2025, technology can amplify EQ efforts. AI-driven tools analyze team dynamics, suggesting EQ interventions, while virtual reality trains leaders in empathy. Goldman's blueprint, leadership modeling, systemic training, and cultural alignment, offers a path forward. Organizations embracing this model gain a competitive edge, attracting talent and driving innovation. Conclusion: why emotional intelligence matters. As we close our journey through working with emotional intelligence, let's reflect on its core message. Success in the modern workplace hinges on our ability to manage emotions, our own and others. Goldman's book, published in 1998, remains strikingly relevant in 2025. In an era of AI, remote work, and global teams, emotional intelligence is the glue that holds organizations together. It's what enables leaders to inspire, teams to collaborate, and individuals to thrive amid uncertainty. Goldman's blend of science, stories, and practical advice makes a compelling case. EQ isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Whether you're a CEO, a manager, or an entry-level employee, cultivating emotional intelligence can transform your career and workplace. The book challenges us to move beyond quick fixes and embrace the hard work of self-improvement. By mastering self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills, we can navigate the complexities of work and life with grace and impact. As you reflect on this summary, consider your own EQ strengths and weaknesses. Where can you grow? How can your organization foster a culture of emotional intelligence? Goldman's vision offers hope. With effort and the right approach, we can all become more emotionally competent, creating workplaces that are not just productive but deeply human. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of working with emotional intelligence. May it inspire you to bring your best self to work and to the world.